Engine failure. All right, simulated engine failure.
Okay.
Okay, I got the airplane. So let's talk about that for a second. I'm going to just turn the autopilot on here so we can chat. So that was a really good example of what happens when you have an emergency in the airplane, okay? A couple of things happen. First of all, it got your attention, right? You got a little boost of adrenaline in there. And then one of the standard reactions is we train on these emergency checklists so much that we have a tendency to reach for those first. But really, any anomaly should be taken care of with 3 steps. The first step is always fly the airplane first.
December 29, 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401, a Lockheed L-1011 with 3 pilots and a jump seating maintenance specialist in the cockpit, start their approach into the Miami International Airport. They lower the landing gear, but the nose gear light bulbs are not indicating down and locked. The 4 become so preoccupied with the burned out nose landing gear light bulbs that they failed to notice the airplane descending, and it continued to descend towards the swamps west of the airport. 94 passengers and 5 crew members were killed when the aircraft impacted the ground. The crew was so distracted that they failed to simply fly the airplane. How would you keep from making the same error?
So if we fly the airplane, and that includes navigating, we're not going to hit anything. We're going to be headed where we need to go. If we're in IFR conditions, we're not going to go off course and run into something. So depending on the anomaly, you may not have much choice. In an engine failure, it's pick a field and go for it, right? If it's something else like an electrical problem or a bird strike, then you might want to evaluate, do I want to head toward this hill? Do I want to level off before I violate somebody's airspace? Do I want to turn around, get closer to the airport? You know, it depends on the situation. But whatever it is, always start with flying the airplane, and that includes navigating, okay? Now, the second step is when you have time, and only when you have time, determine whether you have an emergency procedure available to you. Those procedures are the manufacturer's communication to you about what they've tested, what they've approved, and what they want you to do, okay? So if they have a procedure, follow it carefully, okay, and methodically. Take your time. If you don't have a procedure, let's take the example of a strobe light circuit breaker pops. There's no procedure for that, okay? So don't make up a procedure.
January 31, 2000. Alaska Airlines Flight 261, a McDonnell Douglas MD-83, crashes into the Pacific Ocean near Los Angeles. The 2 pilots, 3 cabin crew members, and 83 passengers on board were killed, and the airplane was totally destroyed. Flight 261 departed Puerto Vallarta, Mexico for San Francisco, but shortly after takeoff, the trimmable horizontal stabilizer stops moving, and the crew cannot trim the pitch forces of the aircraft. Rather than return to land at Puerto Vallarta, or divert to the numerous airports they would fly near, the crew instead contacted Alaska Airlines maintenance and began a long process of in-flight troubleshooting. Neither the crew nor the maintenance technicians could fully understand the reason for the stuck stabilizer, but working together they tried a series of steps to free it. Although the safety board did not directly criticize the pilot's decision to continue, nor are we, a valuable lesson can be learned. If the manufacturer has not provided approved guidance for troubleshooting, making up procedures can create a scenario far worse than the original system fault. About 2 hours and 20 minutes after Flight 261's initial failure occurred, the stabilizer system catastrophically failed, and the aircraft began a final dive into the ocean. What would you do?
It doesn't help to make something up and then maybe get yourself in worse shape than you are. This is especially true the more automated the airplane you fly. Finally, the last thing you want to do once you've done the checklist is evaluate your status, what's working, what's not, and then come up with a plan and execute it. Let's say your alternator goes out. You're either going to get it back or you're not using the procedure. If you get it back, it may just be an anomalous little spurious thing, and you say, well, I'm going to continue on out here in the practice area and see if it does it again. Or, if you don't get it back, you might say, I'm headed right for Scottsdale or Falcon, and I'm going to get on the ground before I have further electrical problems. Okay? That depends on the situation. If you hit a bird and there's a blood spot on the window and that's the only thing that happened, you might say, well, okay, I'm done. I don't need to, I haven't really lost any capability. I'm not at any increased risk. I'm going to continue my flight. Or you might not. That philosophy, those 3 steps of flying the airplane, using the emergency procedure if you have one, and then coming up with a plan and executing it will take care of almost any anomaly you can think of in the airplane. Okay. Now, did you feel that adrenaline?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So that's important to understand that that's biology. It's going to happen, right?
So can't we practice for that and try to be prepared for it?
You know, I've been asked that before, and I would say maybe a Navy SEAL can train enough to not panic when bullets are whizzing by their head, but it takes extensive and specific training, probably not worth the effort for what we're doing, okay? Because it would be really, if it's even possible, it would be very difficult to achieve, I think. Rather, I would rather accept the fact that you're going to get adrenaline, that's biology, and I want to mitigate the hazards of it. So what does it do to you? Well, it stops you from thinking in the short term. It makes you rush. It may even stop you from breathing for a very short period of time, like a few seconds. So how do you mitigate it? Slow yourself down, take a huge deep breath, get some oxygen in your system, and then pause, and then say, okay, what do I have? Okay? So you can do that while you're simply flying the airplane. And in fact, I would argue flying the airplane actually helps you achieve that, because it stops you from grabbing that checklist and doing things like that. So I would rather mitigate it than try and fight with human biology. I just don't think that's the way to go. But you can mitigate it. Slow your speech rate down when you're reading the checklist. Do everything slow and methodical. The worst thing it would be to rush and do the checklist incorrectly and put yourself in further problems.
Yes.
Okay? Any questions about that?
I don't think so.
Okay, good.
And remember, think safe, act safe, stay safe. I'm Safety Chip.